The Texas Republic, short-lived, 10 years old at its when it was annexed by the United States, but still vitally important in the minds of most Texans. All right. After the rebellion against Mexico, they formed a republic. It was never meant to be a long-term thing. In fact, many of the people, the people that were from the American South, immediately wanted to join the American Union. They asked for, hey, can we join the United States and be part of the United States? And the United States was all for it, except that in the 1830s, 1836, the president at the time, they were having some issues with slavery and whether or not it was acceptable to increase they would have been bringing in Texas as a slave state, and there wasn't a free state available. In those days, you had to have one of each. You had to have one slave state and one free state come in together. And when Texas was ready, there was no free state ready. And so they told the Texas government, the new Texas government, no, we can't take you right now. What do? Well, I guess we'll have to form that republic after all that we said we were going to do. And they did. They formed the Texas Republic. They did a couple things. For example, this is the time period they're going to actually form a really close union with England, believe it or not, and a little bit south. And England wanted good relations with Texas because Texas was growing cotton, and England used a lot of cotton, and they wanted another source beyond the United States to get their cotton from, and so they were pushing some good relations there with Texas to do this. And the Texas Republic also opened its doors to immigration. Towns like New Braunfels, Fredericksburg, some of those towns over in the hill country are filled with German immigrants. German immigrants primarily because there were some revolutions in Germany, or what's now Germany. And these are all the guys that lost. And so they came to Texas because Texas needed the money. So they did what Mexico did, and they did these land grant corporations. And they brought in all these Texans, all these Germans. And interestingly enough, the Germans were, they loved the land. And interestingly enough, the Germans actually had their own treaties with the Comanches. They got along really well with the Comanches, whereas a lot of the others didn't. That could be because maybe they didn't have the racial animus that a lot of the Southern Americans had. Maybe it's because they were the revolutions in Germany were all about freedom and equality, and so they come over here and they have all these Comanches, and so they have to look at them and say, well, we just fought and lost for equality. We probably need to treat these guys equally too. So they actually had separate treaties that the Republic of Texas didn't have or didn't honor with the Comanche. So as a result, there's not a lot of fights between them and the Comanche and the Germans that were coming in. But they were definitely absolutely appalled by the amount of slavery that they found in the Republic of Texas. There's letters that they wrote back home saying it's disgusting that they would take away God's one gift to all people is their freedom. And so they were pretty unhappy about that. They weren't the only ones, though. England had already gotten rid of slavery in their country and their territories. And so one of the things is they were trading with Texas, with the Republic of Texas, but at the same time they were putting pressure on them to get rid of slavery. They had gotten rid of slavery in England by passing a law. They didn't have to go to war for it like the United States is going to. But they wanted to, and so they kind of wanted to get rid of slavery all over the place. And in fact, they're going to be pretty successful in some ways doing that. So they were pushing for them to get rid of slavery, which actually scared the Americans a little bit. They couldn't handle this idea of having a republic next door raising cotton with a large African population and not having that African population being enslaved. And so because of that, 10 years after the initial ask, Texas is going to be annexed by the United States to keep it slave territory, to keep the English from convincing Sam Houston and Anson Jones and the other leaders of the Republic that slavery was not an acceptable way that you should liberate or emancipate your slaves and raise your cotton with paid labor. All right, and the English were willing to back that up with cash, which is why so many people in Texas were looking at that. But anyway, didn't happen. Texas is going to remain a slave area, as going to go from being a slave republic to being a slave state until after the Civil War. But there you go. That's why Texas joins the Union. They wanted to. Then they didn't want to. And then America didn't want them to join, but then they did want them to join. And as often happens in politics, sometimes things get kind of screwy and sideways until foreign power comes in and pushes everybody to change what they're doing. Until next time, you have a good day.